Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the another session of the Festival of Enterprise COVID-19 webinar series. I'm David Stevenson, your host. Thank you for joining us. We are joined today by Josh Winfield, business builder manager, from NatWest, who will be taking us through a presentation on the power of mindset. Josh, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, rather.
Thanks very much for asking.
The presentation will be about how our mindset shapes everything we think and everything we do. It is present in every decision we make, and quite often these decisions are made for us by our unconscious and could often be holding us back under the guise of self-preservation, or when we find ourselves having to react quickly, such as the ongoing COVID-19 situation. In this situation, Josh will take a deep dive into the power of mindset. He'll be taking a look at how mindset is formed, altered, and just how powerful a force good and not so good. And so you'll come away with a deeper understanding of your own mindset with clear, actionable tips on how you can develop your own in areas that will accelerate your business. So, Josh, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. And with that, I will hand it over to you.
Thanks very much. Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. Thanks very much for joining. Apologies if you can see a lot of debris behind me. I was recently told by somebody on a webinar that they spent so long looking at whether I'd got the Harry Potter books in the right order, they didn't actually take in what this was. So I'll try and block out as many of the books behind me as possible. But welcome to this afternoon's session. And as David said, we're going to be talking about the power of mindset. Now, within the NatWest Accelerator, mindset is a crucial part of everything that we do. And forms the basis of all of the different coaching and all of the different learnings that we have on our programs. And so as a result, whenever anybody, a business owner or entrepreneur, anybody decides to engage with us on whichever program, this is the first session that we actually go through with them, because for us, it never ceases to become relevant. And particularly in situations like we find ourselves in with COVID-19, having to restructure what we do, restructure often our businesses, that can often shift our priorities. That can mean that actually we aren't able to focus on what we were planning to in our 2020, and we have to redesign that, and we have to look at different areas we can focus. Now, it's one thing to do that. It's one thing to set new goals. And for those of you that joined us on last week's session when we talked about goal setting, that's one thing, to actually write them down and go, okay, I can focus on this. But it's quite another to have that mindset shift, to view that as an opportunity rather than a second best. And so that's really what we're going to explore now, because fundamentally we find ourselves in a period of challenge. We find ourselves in a situation where we can react in usually one of two ways. But actually, quite often that reaction can either mean that we dominate situations, or it can mean that we actually take a backseat. We feel hard done to, and actually then we don't put our full selves into the opportunities that we've got. So that's what we're going to go through today. And at the end, it's my sincere hope that there'll be at least an action or one thing that you're going to start doing as a result of this, to feel more in control, to be more receptive to those opportunities that are there, and they certainly are there. So this is what we're going to go through today. We're going to look at the power of mindset, and I'm going to use just a couple of simple tools to illustrate that and talk about how present it is in everything that we think and everything that we do. We'll then split mindset up into two different areas. Typically, there are two reactions: growth or fixed mindset. Now, you may have come across those terms before. They're very, very well used terms. They don't define us as individuals. I cannot say that I am a growth mindset individual and David is a fixed mindset individual. We are both, and all of us are both some of the time, depending on the situations we find ourselves in. So to understand that a little more, we'll go through a few different techniques a little bit later on in the session around how we can understand our own, and then fundamentally in the areas where we feel it's holding us back, how to develop our mindset. And that's the thing that I want to establish from the outset, is that I am fully understanding of the situation we're in. It is challenging, it is tough, it presents an awful lot of big questions and very, very difficult times for many. And so I am absolutely not sat here saying that that is all completely choice. I am not here to say that you just have to be more growth mindset and you can choose to be. I'm also not saying that you have to be growth mindset all of the time in order to be successful. That's completely not the case. But what we're going to explore in today's session is how to understand the areas in which we currently have a mindset that holds us back, for whatever reason, fear, anxiety, previous experience, but it's holding us back from accelerating our business now and always, and what we can look to do to become more growth mindset in that area. And by doing that, it presents us with being more receptive to opportunities. It presents us with the opportunity to feel like we're in control and that we can grow in those areas that are perhaps holding us back at the moment. So let's make a start and let's think about mindset. Now, usually what I would do in this scenario, now, forgive me, I can't quite see the comments, but I'd be quite interested to understand what people think or what springs to mind from a word association point of view when you hear the term mindset. And so typically when people hear the word mindset, they attach words like, attitude, or how I feel, or how I react to things, or the beliefs that we have. And if there's any different ones as well, keep them coming in, because actually mindset is such a broad descriptor that quite often people associate a number of different things with it. Some people just have the mindset as that's a positive or a negative thing, and they're absolutely right too. The actual dictionary definition of mindset is the established set of attitudes held by an individual. And so if we think about it for a second in terms of when we are perhaps most receptive, when we perhaps absorb most of our knowledge, our learning, our behaviors, and definitely those attitudes, it goes back to childhood. Now, it's never not true that you are the product of the 5 people that you spend most time with. And that is, that's true at the moment. If you're at home with a family of 4 and you're the 5th, then you are the product of them. But typically when we work, and those the 5 people that we spend the most time with, we tend to absorb habits, behaviors, traits, and so on from them. But that is never more true than when we are growing up in our formative years, and our parents, our guardians, whoever brought us up, we tend to absorb a lot of their behaviors, attitudes, beliefs, and so on, both benign and malignant and completely neutral. And quite often we don't realize that. Quite often they just become part of us. We absorb them, and we don't realize that we hear from them very regularly. And I certainly didn't. But this was really the us taking up all of these behaviors a bit like a sponge when we're children was really illustrated to me when I was eligible to vote for the first time. And so I took myself off to the polling station when in the first general election that I was able to vote in, and I voted in exactly the same way as the household I was brought up in. There was no real thought in that. I certainly wasn't particularly politically minded. I did not read manifestos. I did not make an informed decision. I made the decision on the basis of the house I was brought up in, and that was it. And it wasn't until I started to deliver this session that I realized, blimey, that is an inherited attitude, that is an inherited belief that my mindset just took over for me. I was at never point when I walked to the polling station, I was never thinking about who I was going to vote. It was just today's the day to go and vote. I went and I voted. It was pretty much an entirely subconscious experience. And so that got me thinking, well, how often does our mindset make those decisions for us anyway then, on the basis of inherited attitudes, inherited beliefs that actually don't reflect us? Now, most of the time, I think it's fair to say that will be taking over and it doesn't necessarily bother us or affect us in any kind of way. But when we go into the world of our own businesses, when we go into the world of enterprise, quite often that is a very, very uncomfortable place, quite a lot of the time, because things are new, we're encountering different behaviors, different beliefs, different ways of doing things that make us feel uncomfortable, or they make us feel like we're not in control. And quite often then we hear from our mindset and our subconscious takes over, as David said in the introduction, under that guise of self-preservation. And so just to introduce that to you, I'm going to introduce you to your mindset. And so if I said to you that the way that the Festival of Enterprise are going to celebrate the end of the COVID-19 situation is that everybody that has attended this webinar will be invited to a tandem skydive. How many people would be well up for that? And if you're sat there going, yeah, absolutely, bring that on. That sounds amazing. Fantastic. But how many people here would be like, no, never, not in a million years. I am not throwing myself out of a light aircraft attached to a frame tent. And it'd be quite interesting to see the different split. And typically when I do this, there's about a 50-50 split. So do send your answers in the comments if you wish. But I'd be interested to see the split that we have of people that be like, yeah, I'm well up for that. And yeah, absolutely not in a million years. Now, for those of you that have answered yes, brilliant, nice one. I'll hold you accountable for that when the COVID situation is moved on. For those of you that said no, I am completely with you. I am 100% in solidarity with you. But if I ask you, when was the last time you were in a skydive that went wrong, that's informing that mindset? You don't hear from many people that have been in a skydive that went wrong. I'll be honest with you. You don't tend to hear from them too often. And so it's important that actually we consider, well, where is that coming from? Now, I completely appreciate that for some people, their no, their firm no, will be fed by, I have a fear of heights, or perhaps vertigo, or whatever it may be. But quite often, some people just make that decision on the basis of the raw information that they have. And so our mindset is taking over and making that decision for us, perhaps through risk, perhaps through self-preservation. But for most people, there wasn't too much conscious thought involved in that decision. In the same way that quite often what I do with people at this point, if I'm in a room full of people, is I say, I'm going to get everybody to close their eyes, tap them on the shoulder, and one person is going to come to the front of the room and deliver a pitch. Now, the physics of that is I'm going to tap someone on the shoulder, I'm going to ask them to walk and talk for about 60 seconds. But suddenly when I put people in that situation and they hear me walking around, they are pulling their shoulder away from me. They're trying to make themselves look as small as possible, even though in reality, what I would be asking them to do is something they've done so often. Suddenly there is that extra pressure of, I might not be very good at this. I might mess up. What if it goes wrong? What if, and so on. We build ourselves a picture of all the things that could go wrong. And therefore our mindset goes, no, that's too risky. We're not going to do that. And yet in reality, the majority of those people would never have been put in that situation before and would never have stood in front of a room full of people, delivered a pitch, and it completely went in a disastrous way. We quite often make decisions on the basis of what could or what might happen. And because we are wired for self-preservation, no matter what that situation may be, we tend to come down on the side of, no, that's an opportunity for something to go wrong. I'm not going to do it. Now, to come back to that business and that on enterprise context that I just shared with you, there's that element of risk. There's that element of having to do things differently, either by the circumstances we find ourselves in, or for whatever reason, if we're going into a new product area, if we're going into a new customer segment. All of the decisions, all the opportunities open to us have that element of, this is new, there is a risk in this, what if it goes wrong? And so as a result, all of the things that we tell ourselves, those attitudes, those beliefs that we've inherited, quite often they take over and make those decisions for us. And we like to stay in that comfort zone. Now, I'm aware it doesn't happen all the time, but it's just interesting. I like to use this example because I would imagine that there are usually experiences that everybody sitting watching this will be able to go, yeah, do you know what? I had an experience once where I didn't know where that behavior had come from. Or I did something and I never knew I had it in me. All of those kind of things, when you've challenged yourself to get out of your comfort zone, or when you know you've stopped yourself from doing something, everybody tends to have those. That's our mindset at work. And it's just important the next time we find ourselves encountering a difficult and uncomfortable or a slightly annoying situation, it's to understand actually what's at work here. Is this being derived from a previous experience, in which case there's probably an element of truth to this and I should pursue it? Or actually, is this just my mindset trying to take over without much to go on the basis of self-preservation? In which case, we probably need to examine that and look at, this could be an opportunity to explore. And so to categorize that from a business context, and particularly just now, we tend to put this PowerUp mindset together. Now, this is admittedly not an exhaustive, but a fairly comprehensive list of traits that we feel an entrepreneur should either have or be working on, depending on their business. Now, that's not me saying you have to have them all. That's me saying you look at those traits and go, in the context of your business, there will be certain ones that you know apply particularly. And of those certain ones, you'll go, yes, I'm fine at that. I'm perfectly happy, ready to pitch. I'll pitch anytime. But actually learning from failure, I'm not so good at that. I'm not so good with hearing that I don't have a product. I'm not so good at getting adverse feedback from customers, and so on and so on. But if you're developing a particular product at the minute, you need to be prepared to have that adverse feedback. So as we go through this list, look at the ones that you feel apply to you, and the ones that you feel like, yeah, good with that, absolutely fine, I'd give myself 10 out of 10, brilliant. You can leave those as they are. But the ones that I think it's important to focus on, particularly at moments like this, are the ones that you feel, that applies to my business and that's not where I'd like it to be. So that's the first consideration. Which of the ones would you score lower than 5 out of 10 for? They're the ones that actually, in opportunities, in situations like this with COVID-19, where we perhaps can't pursue our business plans in the way that we wanted to, we have the opportunity to do something about these traits. We have the opportunity to do things differently, examine things from a different lens, and understand, actually, if I were to overcome that particular mindset trait, could that open up a new avenue for me to explore an opportunity that this situation is presenting? So for me, when I started this job, I've had my own business, but I was very much behind closed doors. I did a lot of legwork. I built relationships, but I built them one-to-one. I have never, ever felt comfortable presenting. I hated the thought of standing in front of a room full of people. Now, for me, that mindset was created when I was at school. I was a very, very large kid at school. And so as you can imagine, my school life was not particularly pleasant, particularly my secondary school life. And so then when I got into the world of work and I grew up, I actively shied away from any kind of opportunity to put myself out there, put myself on show. And so when I had my business, I made sure that building relationships one-to-one, I'm confident I can do that. Then I went into product management, which is collating information, creating sets of requirements. So it's, again, one-to-one conversation, and then articulating it to people that I'm very comfortable with. Then I was head of events. Now that head of events sounds like you're putting yourself on show, but actually I go to a convention center, set the place up, and then when the event starts, I move on. So I was never on show. When I got the job here, there was no opportunity. There was no opportunity to do that. There was nowhere to run. Presentation is a weekly thing. For me now, it's a 6 times weekly thing if we take my calendar from this week. And so my boss asked me when I started this job, which are the ones that you need to work on? Which are the ones that actually are holding you back from exploiting this opportunity? And I saw these and I sort of took, I'm always ready to pitch. Well, not quite pitch, but present. And I'm an effective communicator. I tend to group those together quite a lot. And I took those and I went, those are the ones that are going to hold me back from exploiting and making the most of this opportunity. And so as entrepreneurs, typically we tend to, when we find ourselves in situations like this, we tend to have a fight or a flight response. And if it's something that we know we need to get better at, if we know it's something we've got to do, we tend to adopt the reaction of, I just got to suck it up. I've just got to be good at it. I've got to be good at everything, and I've got to be good at everything now. In reality, we wouldn't expect that of anybody that worked for us, and we would never have had that expected of us from a particular employer either. So it's an unfair expectation for us to have of ourselves. And so instead of my boss turning around to me in that scenario and going, yeah, you've just got to suck that up, that's part of the job, he asked me the question, what's the one thing that you can do today that will allow you to feel in control of that? And it completely threw me. I didn't really understand it. I didn't really get what he meant. And he said, just go away and think about that. What's the first, if you were going to feel in control of that situation, what's the first thing that would allow you to do that? And so I thought about it and I came back and I said, all right, well, if I've got to get better at presenting, who's the best presenter in the team? I don't want to go and be thrown into the deep end with them. I want to go and watch. I want to go and make loads of notes, and I want to ask him loads of questions at the end. And so he told me, I went down and I watched and I did just that. And because I'd thought about it and I went, well, that would allow me to feel in control because there's very little risk in that. I'm going to upskill so I'll understand how to deliver the content better. And I will understand, because I'll have asked him loads of questions, why that approach was the way it was. I can then format that into my own style. And so it didn't happen overnight. But because I was allowed to feel in control of that, it didn't feel like something that, I've always been rubbish at that. I'm not going to carry on with it. That's just the way it is. It was I've got the opportunity to improve and I'm in control of my own improvement. And that tiny change, just in my mind, because it had been framed up in that way, meant that suddenly there wasn't a fear associated with it. There wasn't pitching, no, I don't want to do that. It was all right, yeah, my skill isn't where it needs to be, but I'm in control of that. I've got a plan for how I want to do it. And that shift, it happened over a couple of months, but it really, really started to work because I felt like I was in control. So what is that for you? If you're looking at these traits, or if you know that there's one that's not written down there and you're going, yeah, do you know what, that's holding me back at the moment. There's an opportunity that this situation's presenting to me, and for whatever reason, this particular trait's holding me back. What's the first thing you can do to feel in control of that? Is it picking up the phone to somebody that you know that's really good at that? That can be the first step, and just go, I just want to pick your brains. I want to pick your brains and understand how you do what you do, why you do what you do, and so on and so on. But so it's important to analyze those traits that we feel that we have that reaction with. Typically because the reactions that we have are either a fixed or a growth mindset reaction. Now, I'm sure that you've heard of these terms before. They're very, very well known. They were first defined by a lady called Carol Dweck, who's the professor of entrepreneurship at Stanford University. And the way that she illustrated that, she did a number of experiments to illustrate the fixed and growth mindset, but she defined these terms because she analyzed that people who took opportunities and excelled were exactly the same skill level, behaviors, backgrounds as the people that chose not to take those opportunities for whatever reason. So same skill level, same individuals, two completely different reactions on the basis of previous inherited beliefs, attitudes, and past experiences. And so that fixed and growth mindset, fundamentally, she has discovered that our mindset, our upbringing, and our past experiences play a vital role. in the shape of that and the norms that we believe around ourselves. The way that she illustrated this, she did a number of experiments, but the one that really, really sticks out with me is she got a group of, I think it was about 10 and 11-year-old children, together, about 100 of them in America, and she put them in an exam hall and gave them the equivalent of a GCSE exam. So, 4 or 5 academic years ahead of them. And she sat them all down. None of the kids knew what was going to be put in front of them. The exam paper was face down, and when they said, okay, turn the exam paper over, the first thing was to measure the reaction. And 30% of the kids in the room took one look at the paper, saw that it was a GCSE exam or the equivalent of, and went, I ain't doing that. That's not for me. They weren't told they had to answer the exam. The reaction was being measured. So 30% immediately went, nah, it's not for me, can't do that. Another 30% opened it, attempted question 1, maybe did that, got to question 2, and just went, oh, it's too hard, can't do it, bored, close the exam. So 60% immediately self-selected out, or within the first 1 or 2 questions. The remaining 40%, conversely, actually went, okay, I can't do question 1, but no, question 2, I can do that. Can't do question 3, but question 4 I can do. And they adopted that approach throughout the paper. And they got to the end, or they attempted as many as they could. So immediately there was that 60-40 split of fixed versus growth mindset, that why me versus try me attitude. But what happened next was even more important, and it really illustrates the point of fixed mindset, is that the 40% that were trying to carry on, they just got carried away. They carried on working. The 60% that had stopped then sought to undermine, belittle, and distract the 40% that were trying to carry on. In other words, that fixed mindset needs other fixed mindsets. It needs that perpetuation to continue that belief. The best way I can illustrate that is, have you ever had a constructive and positive conversation around a water machine in an office? It's very, very easy to share that fixed mindset when you're all together. And when people repel against that, it's very, very difficult to get them on your level. And so it's very, very important that we think about that fixed and growth mindset as 2 completely different sides, but of the same coin. They're the same level of individuals. They're the same skill set, age, demographic, and so on and so on. And yet those 2 reactions are shaped by previous actions, previous beliefs, what we are telling ourselves. And those kids in that situation that tried to finish would tell themselves, no, I can attempt that. Whereas the others are perhaps been told, oh no, that's too hard, and so on and so on and so on. So to explore these definitions in a little bit more detail, the fixed mindset is the perspective that character, intelligence, and creative ability are fixed. In other words, you're not in control of what it is that you're good and you're bad at. Now, quite often, that doesn't affect us, but when we find ourselves in situations like COVID-19, sometimes the areas of opportunity open to us are in areas that fall into that fixed mindset of can't do that, shouldn't do that, and so on and so on. Now, for me, the best example I like to give with fixed mindset is around fitness. As I said, I have always, you probably can't tell because I'm sat down, I'm not the slenderest chap in the world, okay? I've always sort of I am probably what you would class as a yo-yo dieter. So I've always struggled with fitness. And so at the end of every year, or at the start of every year, I should say, rather, it comes to the 1st of January, you think about those New Year's resolutions and you go, yeah, I'm going to go back to the gym. I'm absolutely going to go back to the gym. I'm going to get fit, and so on and so on. So you go back to the gym first time, you're pumped, you've got that enthusiasm to do it. And then you wake up the next morning and you're hurt. And you're like, oh God, I don't want to go to the gym again this week. So you don't. And you tell yourself, oh, it's just painful, I need time to rest, and so on and so on. And then you maybe go again once or twice. But what I know I do is I start telling myself, yeah, but it hurts, and I don't think it's working, and sod's law, I'll get to the gym and I'll be sweating away on the treadmill at 3 miles an hour, and Hercules next to me will be running away at 9 miles an hour, making me look stupid, making me look really bad, and all these things. I build these images up in my head because it's much, much easier to do that and go, some people are just good at fitness. The other example I can give of that is Usain Bolt. People look at Usain Bolt and go, yeah, but he's super tall, he's more leg than tall, so of course he's going to be good at running. Some people are just good at things like that, and others aren't. Because it's very, very easy for us to adopt that fixed mindset. Some people are just good at that, I'm not, so I'm just not going to try. The growth mindset side of that, however, is the perspective that you can change and grow through effort, application, and experience. In other words, I am in control of what I'm good and bad at. So to go back to that gym context, the growth mindset would be to go, well, actually, the only way I'm going to look like Hercules on the treadmill next to me is if I actually keep doing it. And that I might never trouble Usain Bolt in 100 meters. He can probably sleep easy as far as I'm concerned with that. But if I want to get better at running, the only person that's in control of that is me, actually, because I can take myself to the gym. I can go out on my state mandated walk today and go for a run, do it tomorrow and get better, and so on and so on and so on. But I am in control of what it is that I'm good and bad at. But because of previous experience, because of my time at school and the feedback that I used to get from my peers, it's much, much easier to tell myself, oh, some people are just good at that. This is just the way I am. I'm just going to accept it. But in truth, that is a choice. And it's worth noting at this point, like I've said, that I am not a growth mindset individual and David is not a fixed mindset individual. We are all both some of the time according to those previous experiences. And it's also worth noting that just because we are in one of those particular mindsets right now, that doesn't mean it can't change. So anybody that's looking at this thinking, okay, well, I actually do have an opportunity in my business to grow, but it is in an area where I have a fixed mindset. I'm not going to have time to change that. I don't have time to flip that. Changes in mindset can happen in the blink of an eye. Some of them take longer, like my confidence with presentation skills, but they can change and they can be engineered to change very, very quickly as well. So that example that I gave you around public speaking, that upturn, it was really, really low. I would have run a mile from anybody that said, just go and stand on that stage and talk to those people. I would have run a mile from it. That probably took a couple of months to do that and feel more comfortable. Now it's easily the favorite thing that I do. It doesn't feel like work to me. It's enjoyable. I feel like I'm doing a good job, and so on and so on. And you can tell me in the feedback afterwards if I am, and so on and so on. But that mindset changed very, very gradually. But it's still a fundamentally worthwhile thing to do. The other one I had was around cooking, to give you another example. So myself and my girlfriend bought this house a couple of years ago. And previous to that, at Christmas time, for the previous 5 or 6 Christmases, it was always right, you go to your parents, I'll go to mine, see you Boxing Day kind of thing. As soon as we moved in here, we were like, nah, if you want to see us at Christmas time, you've got to come to us. I'll cook. I'm the kind of person that has all the cookbooks. I watch the program. I watch all of the cooking programs like Saturday Kitchen, Sunday Bites, Great British Bake Off. And I think I'm okay at cooking. Now, I had everybody round on Christmas Day. Never cooked Christmas dinner before. I suddenly had 12 people to cook for. And so immediately, because I had all of this confidence, like, oh yeah, I've cooked stuff before and I've always had lots of compliments and things like that, never quite realized how much of a balancing act cooking for that many people is with so many different things. And so everything that was visible, everything on a hob, everything in a slow cooker or whatever, that all was cooked beautifully. Everything in the oven that was out of sight and out of mind, slightly Cajun, I'll be honest with you, Cajun roast potatoes. It was quite an interesting one. And that hit me really hard because I hadn't been able to manage everything when I thought I was really good. I'd built this perspective up with those around me, particularly those around that dinner table, and it wasn't delivered to the standard I expected of myself. I was suddenly telling myself, everybody's going to think that's horrible. Everybody's going to think that's really, really bad. And so as a result now, still, I haven't invited anybody over for dinner since Christmas. I don't want to. I realize I am completely in that from one moment, from one lunch on Christmas Day. My mindset has currently gone from absolute growth to not a complete fixed mindset. I will cook again. It seems so dramatic. I will do it again, but it's taking a lot of time to build that confidence up. So if you can find that kind of example in your business, in your personal life, where you've had that mindset shift, absolutely it is possible to change that back or change it for the better. It just depends on whether you have that desire and you feel like you are in control of that. It comes down to this: E plus R equals O. An event plus your response will have a direct impact on the outcome. So events that are befalling us at the moment, the COVID-19 situation, it is an uncomfortable situation. It does present opportunities. It presents the necessity to do things differently. Depending on our mindsets, how we respond to that will have a direct impact on the outcome. If you know that there are ways and needs to do things differently, and a current mindset that you have is telling you, can't do that, shouldn't do that, the last time you did that, you look stupid, all of those kind of things, we will respond in a way that means that we'll shy away from it, we'll try and sidestep it, we'll try and do anything but. And that is going to have a direct impact on the outcome that we get when we emerge from this situation, when we get back from normality. I'm not saying it's comfortable. I don't want to gloss over it and say it's just something that we have to suck up. It's absolutely not. Remember that first question that I was asked and that you can ask yourself. An event has happened to us. How we choose to respond will have a direct impact on the outcome. So what's the first thing you want to do to understand and feel like you're in control of that response? That's the first thing to consider. So why is this important for you? Why do we talk about this with entrepreneurs? Well, to round off, as entrepreneurs in general, without a situation like coronavirus, we encounter situations that are uncomfortable more often than any other section of society, with the exception of perhaps healthcare workers. But as a result, we might be the only person in the business, or we might be managing a team of 4 people. But to all of those individuals, sometimes we have to be the finance director, the HR director, the marketing director, CEO, and so on and so on. When you work in a large corporate structure and there's a problem, there is either a process or a person you can take that problem to overcome it. When you're an entrepreneur, you are that person, you are that process. And so those uncomfortable situations, those situations where we don't have prior skill or prior experience, they're going to occur. And when those situations do, we can either choose to try and sidestep them, we can choose to try and ignore them or try and blast through them without actually upskilling, or we can go, this is an opportunity to learn. This is something that is going to be beneficial in the long term. And this is something that I can control. I just need to break it down. And so as in general, we encounter those challenging situations more often. And we can choose to either enjoy or endure those situations, but particularly right now when we have the COVID-19 situation, how we choose to react, how we choose to respond, that is down to us. And whilst it may be uncomfortable, there are things that we can do to develop that growth mindset in areas where we're holding ourselves back. So as an action, off the back of this call, off the back of this webinar, take some time today to think about these 3 questions. Where do you currently have that fixed mindset about your business? What does it stop you from doing? And so therefore, what is the first thing that you could do to feel in control of that? And then when you've thought about those 3 and you've got an answer, particularly to question 3, give yourself a deadline to put that question into practice. So that first thing that you could do, when are you going to have done that by? It's Wednesday right now at 12:32. Could you have done that by the end of day tomorrow? Could you have done that by the end of day Tuesday when you come back from the Easter weekend? But by understanding it, by understanding the impact that it has, and quite often writing that down really tends to hammer that home, and then understanding the first thing that you can do to do something about that, it gives you that level of accountability that means you're more likely to do something about it. So when you've identified that, it's then how you check in with it. The way that you overcome particular mindsets, fixed mindsets and things like that is to regularly check in with them. And so I'm just going to finish off. This is my last slide with a few top tips. Now, I'm not going to go through them all, but there are 3 here that are really, really important to me in terms of how you can look to develop your mindset in those areas. And the first one is actually the top one. Look at the language that you use with yourself and with other people. Now, the first part of this, looking at the language you use with yourself, it comes back to the age-old adage, if you tell yourself you can or you can't do something, you're absolutely right. But actually, if there's the desire there to do something about it, and you put yourself in the situation and go, this is something that I want to do, this is something that holds me back, all you have to do is put yet at the end of the statement, I can't do that. You can't do that yet. If you start to tell yourself that, you are more in control of that situation. Look at the language that you use by going, okay, if I can't do that just yet, what's the first thing I can do to feel more comfortable? But we have so many thoughts fly through our mind every day. Don't let our subconscious or our existing mindsets inform the usual rhetoric we tell ourselves of, oh, you can't do that particular thing, or you don't know anything about that, and so on and so on and so on. It's so easy for us to do that, so easy. I fall into that trap all the time and I have to catch myself. So look at that language that you use with yourself. The second part is the language that we use with other people. So as we grow our businesses, as we develop as individuals, we're going to have more and more relationships with more customers, more colleagues, wholesalers, suppliers, investors, whoever it may be. And particularly at this moment in time, we may be interacting with individuals that we wouldn't normally because we find ourselves where we do. Now, the way that we develop those relationships, the way that we develop long-lasting relationships that benefit us as individuals and our businesses is the way that we come across. And I think everybody has a really, really clear idea of how they would like to come across, how they would like to be perceived. But when was the last time any of us actually checked in on that with an individual? We don't very often. And usually, particularly in my case, I can't say that it is always this case, but usually we don't check in on that because actually I don't want to be told that how I think I come across isn't actually true. It's a very, very uncomfortable thing to hear sometimes, but actually it's really, really important to make sure that we aren't falling into a fixed mindset, to make sure that we aren't hastily forming opinions of other people on the basis of how they react, but actually we are coming across how we want to. So who is it in your network that you can trust enough to go, I think I come across in this way, and I'd like to come across in this way. I want you to tell me if I don't. It's a very, very uncomfortable thing, and it has to be somebody that you would trust to be able to tell you that. But looking at the language that you use with yourself, being kinder to oneself, but also really, really understanding all the areas in which you tell yourself you can't do something, you shouldn't, you're going to mess that up. Start to challenge that behavior, put yet at the end of that, and start to understand exactly how you come across to people and if that's in line with what you would like. By checking in with it, you're more likely to do something about it. And that leads me on perfectly to the second one, which is take time to reflect. You wouldn't climb a mountain with your eyes closed and not look at the view until you got to the top. You're going to stop at a lot of points, take a look back at how far you've come. It's exactly the same thing when you're trying to develop your mindset. Whatever you may write down from that exercise, those actions that I gave you a little bit earlier on in the previous slide, when you define those, when you think about what it is that you want to work on, it will feel a little bit like you're stood at the bottom of the White Cliffs of Dover and are trying to jump to the top. But in reality, there is a side step, there is a staircase up the side. And it's important that every now and again, whether that's on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis, you take a look back and go, what's gone well and what requires more focus in developing that mindset. When you take time to look back, you appreciate how far you've come. And quite often that gives you the motivation to take that next step the next day as well. So however you want to reflect, if you keep a diary, if you keep a journal, brilliant. If you like something a little bit more rigid, a little bit more templated, there's loads and loads of methods of reflection available if you whack that on Google. For me, I ask myself 3 questions at the end of every day. What's going well? What requires more focus? And do I feel in control? I write the answers to those 3 questions down every single day. And if whatever is making me feel like I'm not in control, whatever I need to focus on, I build that into my to-do list for the next day. If something stays in either of those 2 answers for 2 days in a row, I know I haven't done something about it. If it hasn't, I know that I'm moving forward, and it gives me that sense of motivation and satisfaction as well. And then the final one for me, because I think the bottom 4 we've kind of covered already, is that 3rd point. Set your vision and be clear on your plan. So we talked about visions and goals in last week's session, but actually the reason that we say this is important from a mindset point of view is that in a morning, in normal circumstances, I know nobody's getting in a car at the moment, but normally in normal circumstances, you wouldn't get in your car and ask your sat nav where you want to go. You will have the destination in mind when you start the car. It has to be exactly the same when it comes to developing your mindset. So if you know where you want to be, if you know where you want to go, you are much more capable and much more in control of reflecting and going, am I on the right track? Much more capable of going, are we on the right road here? If you encounter a stumbling block somewhere, if you know exactly where you're trying to get to, you're also much more better equipped to understand different ways, different things that you need to do. So look at the language you use with yourself, take time to reflect regularly on the areas that you're trying to develop, and make sure you've got a really, really clear idea of when you've developed that aspect of mindset that's currently fixed into more of a growth mindset, what will that look like? What will you be able to do so that you can see you're on the right track? So I'll take questions in just a second. I'll hand back to David, because I'm sure there are a few. Just very quickly on this, and then I will hand over to questions. If we've covered mindset there in a very broad sense, what mindset is, how it impacts us on quite a high level as entrepreneurs. If this is something that's of interest to you and it's sparked something within you, if you sign up for the NatWest Business Builder program, which is completely free and it's an online digital program, there are 3 additional learning modules all about the development of your own mindset. And they focus much more on you. They're much more you-centric in terms of you've had the high-level overview. Now let's explore what you can do to put that right. Here's how you can track it. Here's how you can develop your self-awareness and start to work with your inner critic and things like that. So if you'd like to sign up, you can either search Google for NatWest Business Builder, or there's a QR code just there, which I'll leave up. But for now, David, I will hand back to you if there are any questions.
Josh, that's very kind. That was very very informative. So we'll leave that excuse me, that QR code up for a bit. There's also a URL there, isn't there? Which is
yes, there is. Yeah, there's a bit.ly link there. Apologies that for obvious reasons you can't click on it, but if you want to snap a photo or type it in on the tab next to you, that bit.ly link will take you to exactly the same sign up page. Yeah.
Great. I do have some questions, and I'm sure some more will filter through. I'm just going to put this link on quickly here for everyone. They want to click on that link. So we have a question here. The first question is from Anne. wondering if there's a particular reflection tool that you recommend.
Absolutely. Forgive this slightly strange question, but can you see my face at this moment in time as well as the slide deck?
Indeed, yeah. I think I want to see your face. What I'll do is minimize the slide for now.
Okay, so to answer Anne's question, I'm just going to draw a quick template, which is why I asked that question.
Sure.
Yes, the one that I would recommend is a framework called More, Better, Different, and Less. Now, I used to use this because I found that actually I used to keep a diary and a journal, and typically with that growth and fixed mindset, that 60-40 split, I would concentrate more on what wasn't going well than what was. So it wasn't particularly balanced. I noticed it was quite negative. So I looked for a method of reflection that was a little bit more regimented and that would force me to examine both. And so I came across a technique called More, Better, Different, Less. I don't know if you can see that. Hopefully you can. But effectively what you do is you draw yourself a grid very, very crudely, or you can set it up on Excel if you would rather, and you literally fill it with more, better, different, less. And this really works whether you do it on a daily or a weekly basis, but you apply your day or your week to that. So what's gone really, really well that week? It's given you loads of energy, it's had massive impact, it's helped people, it's given you a big sense of satisfaction, and you feel like you've moved forward. That's what you need to be doing more of. What's gone well, it's had similar benefits, you feel like it's good, but actually, do you know what, that's taking quite a long time. I need to find a better way to do that. So that's still going well, that's still stuff that's important to do, but there's room for improvement. Then you come down to the second tier, which is, okay, so what's not going so well at the minute? What isn't really adding the value that it should, and is perhaps not actually having the desired results, and so on and so on? We need to look for a different way to do that. We need to look for a different objective, or perhaps we need to look for a different method. And then finally, what is your absolute kryptonite? What do you really, really struggle with? It takes everything you've got to get through it, and yourself and the business are struggling to see the benefit. You should be doing less of that. Now, you don't have to write loads and loads. I used to put maybe individual words in there sometimes. You also don't have to put something in every box every day. But what's important is that on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, you would then take a step back and look at that and go, right, what's occurring a lot in the more column? How do I build, am I actioning that? Am I doing more of that? And is the stuff that's in the less column still staying there? If that's true, you're not doing anything about it. So it's not only a great reflection tool, but it's good to hold yourself accountable for, am I actually doing anything with this information or not? So that's probably the best one that I've found, but there are loads. I would encourage everybody that wants to get a method of reflection, find one that works for you. If you type in methods of reflection into Google, there's tens of thousands of hits. What's really, really annoying is IKEA's SEO is so good that if you type in methods of reflection, you get adverts for their mirrors, which is slightly distressing. But yeah, find one that works for you. But I hope More, Better, Different, Less is a good place to start.
Excellent. Well, Anne says thank you. That's something she's going to try. And equally, we're getting lots of messages thanking you for the presentation today. Very engaging. We have another question here from Mike, who likes the E plus R equals O analogy, and was wondering if that's something that he can use.
Certainly, yeah. It's not ours. It's not ours. I couldn't tell you where it is actually. This content is actually slightly predates me within the team, but yes, please do. It's something that I'm very conscious of my comfort zones because I deliver this session a lot, and if I know that I'm put in a situation where I am going to be out of that, I actually write E plus R equals O on my hand, because obviously if I'm typing, I'll be looking at that quite regularly, and it really does help to check your behavior. It really does.
Josh, that's great. We are getting, there was a question about whether the information in the presentation was available for people if they wanted to look at it, or is the presentation available in some format?
Absolutely. So this overview session, the slide deck as a whole isn't available in total, but actually if you do register for Business Builder, module 1 of Mindset is effectively a recap of this session. So the majority of the slides we've gone through, you'll be able to see again. There'll also be a few more videos. Unfortunately for people, that does mean that they'll have to see more of me talking. But yes, so can't share the slide deck with you, but module 1 on the Business Builder platform for Mindset is a recap of this session.
And so for people to register, they go to NatWest /business builder? Or
No, so it would be best way to do it is to Google NatWest Business Builder. That will take you straight to the sign up page, or you can just hover over hover your smartphone camera over the QR code on the screen just there, or visit the bit.ly link that David put in the chat. If you register, it's just an email address, and it's as simple as that, and accepting the terms and conditions. You'll be onboarded within 24 hours, and then you have unlimited access to our Business Builder portal, which the best way I can describe that to you is effectively a Netflix style player for business support modules.
Okay, great. This is another question from Mike, who actually also attended last week, and he was just wondering if you could clarify again just a little bit the difference between the Business Builder program and the Entrepreneur Accelerator program.
Sure, yeah. So the Business Builder program is aimed at, not exclusively, but it was designed in mind for idea through to early stage, through to probably kind of year 5 businesses. So that kind of breadth. So because Business Builder focuses on largely digital modules and digital events to support people through developing entrepreneurial mindset, developing a thorough understanding of customer discovery and customer research, how to do that, and how to present and market your business accurately. Now, that's not only what we focus on, but as a result, and because there are a large number of idea and early stage businesses, it is largely a digital program. So typically when we don't have something like coronavirus, you have the digital learning platform, which is what you've got access to through that slide there. And then we would run nationally a comprehensive calendar of events throughout the UK physically to bring people together and create those networks. At the minute, we're delivering a lot of those events digitally. And then finally, you've got a dedicated closed Facebook group of a few thousand entrepreneurs that are all on the Business Builder program. That's a great source of support, learning, advice, a little bit of success, success celebration and things like that. But it's a really, really good dedicated community. But Business Builder for idea, early stage businesses up to that year 5 point. But in reality, what we find is that it has benefit for a business at any age if they want to refresh or go in and perhaps see some new perspectives. The Accelerator program is for those established businesses. So the requirement to get on the Accelerator program very much is you have to be a validated business turning over. And the Accelerator program is slightly different because, again, outside of normal circumstances, that is a physical acceleration program. So it is a 6-month program where you would get access to a particular hub, like a co-working space. We have 12 of those across the UK. You have access to a dedicated business coach who you will meet with one-to-one each month, and you have a series of workshops as well. So those are really the differences. You have access to a month, up to 18 months of support on that program as well. So effectively 3 separate intakes, which you can either take concurrently or you can take 6 months on, 6 months off, and so on and so on. So the Business Builder is there for you all the time. If you want to work at 3 a.m., it's there. The Accelerator program, little bit more one-on-one focused with a coach and so on, but for less time.
Great. Well, thank you for that clarification.
No worries.
We have another question here from Nishan asking about tips for beating procrastination, fixing one's mindset to that sort of so-called beast mode, as it were.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, procrastination is something, this is week 5 working from home for me, and weeks 1 and 2, I really struggled. I would say that a real way to kick procrastination to the curb is to revisit what those goals are. So set yourself those end of the week goals in terms of what it is that you want to achieve, but don't write down what you think should be there. Write down what's really going to impress you. Think about what you're going to, whether you sit down on Friday with a beer, a glass of wine, a Coke, whatever, or a cup of tea. Think about what you're going to sit down and it is really going to impress you, not anybody else, you. And if that's your guiding principle of this is where I want to be by the end of the week, I find that there is generally a little bit more motivation anyway to sit down and do things. So that's one. Realign those goals to motivate you. The next one is get yourself into routines. So it's so easy, there's loads of memes flying around on Facebook and in the ether around, people set up for Zoom calls where they're wearing a shirt and then they're sat in their boxer shorts or whatever. Get yourself into a routine where you get yourself up, dressed like you would if you were going to work each morning anyway. Your approach results in what you get. So if you tried to do drum lessons behind a piano, you're not going to get, you can understand theory, but you're not going to get any better at playing the drums. So get yourself into those routines, take breaks regularly as well. have that sense of this is what's going to impress me by the end of the week, and then reflect. So ask yourself those tough questions at the end of a Monday and go, am I a fifth of the way towards my end of the week goal? If not, it's nobody else's fault but yours. And believe me, if you have a day like that, you won't on Tuesday. If you ask yourself that honest question and you don't like the answer you get, you won't have the same kind of behavior the next day.
Fair enough. That's great advice. Great. Well, I know that everyone found that incredibly informative. And Josh, we very much appreciate you joining us this afternoon, and as always, sharing very interesting content and yeah, very, very interesting insights into the entrepreneurial mindset. Everyone's very, very appreciative. And yeah, thank you very much for joining us.
No worries. If anybody would like any more information or any more support, they can just send an email to businessbuilder@natwest.com. I know that seems like a faceless inbox. It is manned by myself and one other. So I absolutely will pick up any email that gets sent there. It won't get lost.
That's very kind. So I'm going to put that on the chat as well, businessbuilder@natwest.com. There is a replay that will be available immediately after we finish here today for anyone who would like to watch this again or is having technical difficulties. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. And Josh, thank you as always for your time. Incredibly helpful.
No problem at all. Thanks very much, everybody. All the best and stay safe.
Take care, everyone.